to the inception. So before we start in any kind of Buddhist teachings, we try and engage our mind in the correct motivation to say, I'm not here to believe anything, I'm here to try and understand where it is my world comes from and how to see it for what it is, and may that awaken in me. So it's not like, oh yes, Buddha, let me be your friend. It's like that thing that you saw, experienced, and connected with, may I get it? So that essence, may I get that? Yeah. We do that by bribing that idea with a mandala offering. Stephen.
사실
우리의 주시는 것처럼 리라빙치는 윤대 경파디 성계 신름이 대구알기 좁은 남다치마 주파쇼 이랑 그르락 나만다 감리라타야위
상계
주장서기 쇼남마 전주발드락니 격수지 다길 천년기 배선함기 로바든지 상계 주파쇼
상계
주장서기 쇼남마 전주발드락니 격수지 다길 천년기 배선함기 로바든지 상계 주파쇼
상계
주장서기 쇼남마 전주발드락니 격수지 다길 천년기 배선함기 로바든지 상계 주파쇼. Right. So with that motivation, my job tonight is to get you feeling that all the stuff we've been covering, we can actually apply in a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis. So I'm going to review some of the core ideas, core concepts. I'm going to give you an ethical dilemma to apply them to, and then hopefully we can have a nice public fight about what's the right way to view it and not be really good Buddhists. Yeah. I think I left you off last week with this, right? Where we were talking about how fortunate we are to even consider reviewing what it is this world, this life experience is. To be able to get to a point where we are truly questioning reality so we can address it correctly is a rare thing. And I think I left you off there, right? Like, for you to be seeking a new way to engage with the world which stops pain, potentially destroys suffering, and gets this thing that we are, this entity that we are, into a state of enlightenment. If that's possible, and we're trying to investigate and reach that, that is very unique, because we could get lost in all sorts of activities here on this planet as human beings, and we might think this is it for consciousness. These teachings tell us it's not it. There is something beyond our limited experience of what reality appears to us to be. And so that as Buddhists, or people that study Buddhism, we get confused about the way reality is, what the Buddha taught reality, what he experienced reality to truly be. And then we get confused. We say, oh, then my reality mustn't be true if the Buddha's thing, so I better have faith and follow on what the Buddha said. And that's not the point. The Buddha said, don't trust me. You have to try and understand what I understood for yourself, for it to mean anything. So it's not like we have belief in the Buddha, yeah? And coming from a Christian perspective, we tend to think that way about these practices. So let's not get confused about what it is we're investigating here. The theory is, and we'll cover it quickly, is that this thing that we are, the awareness that says I am, and here is my universe, is not, according to the Buddha, the way it appears. The way it appears is limited to our functions. And us as humans see the world in a particular way, cause and effect and so on, which functions and works, yes. Animals see the whole world in a completely different way, and that's true too for them. And that's not the only way it is, and that's not the only way it is, and the potential in all of us is way more than that. Yeah, way, way more than that. And investigating that until we get an aha requires a whole bunch of study, thinking, meditating, habituating, practicing, failing, yeah? And it's such a tight rope because it's easy to fall into what our human condition is, which is just to get lazy and remember, if I do this, I'm gonna be okay. And that's not true. It really isn't true, okay? You have to remain engaged in investigating what life is. So this proposes, or the Buddha proposed, a whole bunch of things for people to practice if they want to have the same experience he had about the ultimate way things exist. And that's what this 20-year degree in a Tibetan monastery studies and habituates, which in the West we've condensed into a 7-year program, depending on who teaches it, yeah, of very heady and applicable ways of viewing and engaging with the world, which we then condensed into a 12-week course that reviews a third of that, which now we've condensed into a 2-hour talk about the 20-year thing. I can't remember what I put on the next slide, but I'll talk about it, right? Can someone tell me what it is up there? Is it wisdom? Yeah, okay. One core idea that we've covered this year is the idea of wisdom, yeah? And wisdom is synonymous with what word in Buddhism?
Emptiness.
Emptiness, right? And so fundamental to understanding the code that the Buddha laid down is understanding what emptiness is. And understanding that gives you a specific kind of wisdom, a wisdom about the way things ultimately exist. And if you don't have that right, you could then keep learning all these Buddhist things or any other practices and get it wrong. And it won't work for you, or it will work like most samsaric things work, which is it will break at some point, it will break down at some point. So fundamental to picking up Buddha's words or Buddha's ideas about how we should engage with the world to get an aha moment, a realization, is this idea of emptiness. And so I need you guys to tell me, we did a whole course on this, the Dhammapada Sutra, right? And then there's the Heart Sutra that deals with emptiness, right? And emptiness, tell me what emptiness does not mean that we might think it means. Yeah, and you got to yell because I'm old and haggard.
It does not mean that nothing.
Yeah, so emptiness, a common way of thinking about it in the West is, oh, there's nothing there, nothing exists. Things are empty, therefore they don't matter or they don't exist. That is not what the idea of emptiness is, and that won't help you. Yeah. What else is, people think, let's meditate on emptiness, and they think, I'm going to meditate on blank, black screen, like I'll try not to have a thought, right? Not a thing in Buddhist thought. It's not a thing, it's a mistake. It's a mistake in probably linguistics of getting those words into the, because if cause and effect are true, which Buddhism believes, right? It only adds cause and effect to your consciousness as well as to all external matter. That's the big aha, right? If cause and effect exist, what would be the result of blanking out and thinking of nothing if you could do it, which you can't, yeah? If light produces light, if an apple seed produces an apple tree, what would trying to do nothing result in? Nothing, right? Seriously, so if just logically, it's stupid to try and sit there and think of nothing. That's not what the mind does. Now, it's just a misunderstanding about the word emptiness. Now, what does emptiness mean? And if you get this, then you can try and see all the other practices and they will make sense. They'll be like a puzzle that actually connect. If you don't understand this, you're going to think, I've got to be this way, and I've got to practice this, and I've got to practice that, and they won't seem connected. Emptiness and karma lock in an understanding of all these practices. So we've got to get that fundamentally. So what is emptiness? What really is emptiness? In the simplest way you can explain it.
Nothing exists from its own side.
Nothing exists from its own side. Okay? Now, if I didn't know you guys, that would sound bizarre. And think, what the hell does that mean? Nothing exists from its own side. Like, we've developed a language here, right? So what does that mean for someone that's never heard that before?
When you go observing and trying to find an essence to something, or trying to find a nature to something, you would come up empty of an answer.
Great. Say that again louder.
If you were to analyze something and try to find the essence or its true nature, you would come up empty of an answer.
Yeah, so you come up blank, empty. There's no nature findable. And what was your words? Nothing
Exists from
its own side, right? So to try and think, we know this is a rose, right? This is a rose. Is it not a rose?
Depends from
Because you've been thinking this way. I don't want to say Buddhist either, because I don't want you to be Buddhists. I keep saying that in Buddhist class. I don't want you to be Buddhist, because I think Buddhists think I have to be a certain way. The word Buddha was given to a being who woke up, Buddha awoke from the illusion that this must be only what I think it to be, a rose. In fact, when you go and investigate rose-ness, the essence of rose or flower-ness or petal-ness or what's this stuff? Leafness. What's that stuff?
Stem.
No, that's the stemness. See, we're having problem agreeing on what things are called, but when trying to find the essence, is this flower? And we try and investigate and find the quality that sits within this object, separate from me looking at it. If I put that object over there, is there flower-ness or rose-ness in that thing? And you'd have to say no, because when you go searching for it, is it this part that has roseness? Is it less roseness now that I took a petal? Is it less roseness? Oh, I'm getting this up. Yeah. Is it less rose now that I took a part of it? And if I break the stem, and if I break that, at what point?
Well, that's not a rose.
That's not a rose either, right? Exactly. So where the hell is rose? And you think, okay, what a stupid way to try and invest. Of course, it's a rose. Yeah. Is it not a rose?
I don't know how to answer that.
I'm trying to confuse you. Is it a rose?
Yes.
Yeah. Does it have roseness?
Sure.
The essence of rose in this object, does it have it?
No.
I mean, it seems to.
Hmm?
It seems to.
It seems to. But when you go searching for it, where is it? Where do you find rose? So yeah, you only find rose in the being perceiving this object as rose. Now that's radical for us Westerners, right? Because what we're saying is there is no rose here, this way. There is rose somewhere here. Yeah? That has a ton of implications. But what you said is correct according to Buddhist thought. This does not have any nature by itself, like you said, from its own side of roseness. It's not radiating its essence as a roseness. Prove it. Puppy dog comes in, wants to chew on it. It's not saying, I'm chewing the rose. Bees want to get nectar out of it to make food. It's not thinking the rose, right? They're having complete different perceptions of the same object, atoms put together, and their consciousness is experiencing it in a certain way, and our consciousness is experiencing it in a certain way. The fact that rose isn't here that rose sits somewhere in here, yeah, does not mean this does not exist, right? It exists, yeah? So what wisdom means, what emptiness means, is that there is no roseness, no nature in this object from its own side. It doesn't mean there is no object. It doesn't mean nothing exists. It doesn't mean there's blank, yeah? It just means when your mind goes to look for rose in here, it comes up blank. And you can do that exercise over and over and over, and you won't ever find rose in here. That's all emptiness is. Why the hell is that important? Why are we talking about it on a Thursday night in a hot Manhattan day? And can it really change my life, like wake upness, Buddhism, wake upism, yeah, wakeism,
Sure.
Buddhism, yeah, wakeism promises. Can that idea, can that understanding about the nature of this reality change my world? And the answer, if you investigate further, is completely. Because if there is no nature of rose in this object, and I am somehow forced to experience rose, and we can investigate that, because you can't not see it as a rose. We humans are forced to see this as rose. And dogs are forced to experience this as chew toy. And bees are forced to experience this as food. It can't be three things at once, and yet it is. It by itself is not those three things. Those three things come from the different minds they're experiencing. And that's so simple, we miss it. It's so obvious, we miss it. Because we're used to thinking of it as, this is a rose, and if you are going to harm my rose, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to harm you, because this is my rose. Yeah, so that's the way we're used to dealing with it. Oh, I'm in love with her, she gave me a rose, right? And so we ascribe to objects and emotions a whole ton of meaning that we think that nature comes from those objects, and it never is that way. It only comes from us. So then the whole search of where rose exists and where the nature of this thing exists is fundamental, the second part of the most fundamental thing about Buddhist thought. First, things don't have a nature. We got that as basic, or yeah? Things are empty of having nature, and that means wisdom. And you can study that and try and find that in everything. If you figure it out for rose, you can figure it out for box, you can figure it out for my body is empty of a nature. Hand isn't hand from its own side. There is something making hand in the construct of my mind. A model of hand is what makes me see hand. Forced upon me, right? Living, being human, same nature, empty of being the way we think it is. Dying, same, and that is the crux. That can begin to challenge the way we experience life in a big way. So that's one half of the equation. The other half that we studied, or the implied part, is causality, which is just a fancy word for karma, yeah, if you were from the East. So the way that the cause and effect are true according to Buddhist thought, but way more true than we learn in the West, yeah? Imagine applying what you know about causality, cause and effect, yeah, and the explosion of cause and effect that happens when you plant a field and then a forest comes up, yeah, of the like that you've planted. Imagine if that was equally true to every movement of thought in your mind. Every movement of your mind had a result equal to its cause. Imagine if that, because we don't even think of that, but Buddha's huge aha was that cause and effect are infallible. Infallible. Cause and effect are infallible, but it applies equally to your mind. And when you do that, when you grab that things don't have a nature, that the nature comes from your mind, and you understand that cause and effect never fail, whatever you put in your mind, you are forced to experience. Then you can create a rose which is amazing, or you can create an object that is projected onto this that is horrific for you, dependent on the causality that is forcing your experience of this object. because you can't choose it. I want it now to be a chew toy. You still think the rose is a chew toy. Yeah, I want it now to be a bar of gold. You can't choose the projection that you're forced to have. That comes from some part of your consciousness. And the study of causality of karma is understanding what is it in my consciousness that is forcing that experience. When you put those two together, and there's a whole bunch of study and courses on karma, then the implication is that you have incredible, unlimited potential. That you don't have to be stuck in a realm where you are perceiving the world in the way you're currently perceiving, which is things are good and then things are bad, and things are great and then things are terrible, and things are good and things are bad. That if those two fundamental ideas are true, karma and emptiness, and the Buddha says, don't believe me, go and test it. Because if you go and believe me, you have to go and believe the next bastard that tells you some other thing. Yeah, and that's not a thing in Buddhism, believe me. Yeah, you have to try and break it. And if you do break it, if you say, no, that makes no sense, then the Buddha says, don't be in this path. Go away. Don't practice this thing. Because if it's not true to your direct experience, then you're pretending, right? And you're believing, or He also says you don't have to be completely 100% certain of something before you begin practicing to see if it breaks or not, right? Like if you see that something is probably right 80% of the time, then try it until you get an aha. Yeah. He also says don't reject it outright. Keep testing it. So do you understand what we've covered so far? Karma and emptiness, fundamental, and we've reviewed that in the Diamond Cutter Sutra. That was the beginning of this course. And then we did something with causality that was implied. The next course that we did were two courses on taking vows. One was the Bodhisattva vow course, and the other one was the Vinaya, right? Ethical way of life. And this to me was, when I got the link, it was amazing. If what I just said is true, and you have to test it, things don't have a nature. These are empty of being what we perceive them to be. But we are perceiving them to be something, and we can't really choose it. But that force, that karma, that causality is caused by what we've done in the past, our intention, the stuff we've put in our minds in the past, good, bad, and neutral. Yeah? So if that's true, that everything we experience, good, bad, or neutral, comes from how we've been to others in the past or in our world in the past, then the implication is morality, ethics, being an awesome person on the planet, taking care of others, is the only way you're going to plant enough imprints in your mind to perceive the world as awesome. Yeah? Equal and opposite reaction. So the implication here is that morality is, and that's why morality is at the core of so many religions, I believe, because if things don't have a nature and they're dependent on you, if you are full of goodness, you're going to be forced to experience the world as good, yeah, and visions or whatever people have in their lives. That's a possibility. And if your mind is filled with negative intent, then you're going to be suspicious and see negativity all around you. That makes simplistic sense, but you have to dig and investigate it. So then the implication is, how do I live an ethical way of life, right? And most of us are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. When they get to this part of practice. And so the Buddha laid out for people that are just beginning or can't think through it too much, is like, if you want to practice this, at least stop harming people. And that will stop the negative imprints in your mind that generate a negative experience in your life. So it's like, at the bare minimum, stop hurting other beings. Yeah. So he gave the equivalent of our 10 commandments. That if you want your life to not expire and get sick and so on, then protect other beings' lives. Don't kill them. Yeah. And so on. So he did that. And then it's like, if you're going to live an ethical life and you want a quicker result, how do you fertilize that soil? And then it's like, you have to take vows. So that's where vows come in. We got the link between karma, emptiness, and morality, right? There's three things. That makes sense if you understand karma and emptiness that way. Otherwise, morality is just another list of bullshit I have to do. If you didn't understand that what you do creates your experience. If you didn't understand karma and emptiness, being a good person is just another wish list, of, like the commandment, right? And that's not the point here. It's that what you do is what you experience. That makes sense because of karma and emptiness. Now, if you want that to have a result quicker, if you want to put fertilizer on that soil, you then take vows, right? And so the next course we did was about taking specific vows, which aren't just not harming, but rather taking care of, proactively taking care of other beings. In other words, the imprints you're putting in your world are not just, I'm not going to harm anyone. You're going to then get out into the world, and in whatever field you are and whatever you do with your life, have the intention to do good towards others. It's more than just being moral, it's making a promise to be extra good. Yeah, a bloody do-gooder. Yeah, but really try. Because as you try, if you promise to try, the imprint in your mind is going to be deeper, stronger, which will have a deeper, stronger result. That's the theory summarized. Make sense? So, okay, so with 20, that's probably 15 years of study. One more.
Well, on this subject, a question. The difference between a precept and a vow, and the difference between, like, we say what do we say, Vinaya and Pratamoksha? Like, some people say, oh, the Pratamoksha vows are the ethic vows, but it seems to me like we have the 10 virtues or 10 non-virtues. We have the 4 plus 1 Pratamoksha layman vows, and there's a huge slew monk Pratamoksha.
Yeah, 300 and something.
What's the relationship between the liberal relationship between Vinaya and the 10 virtues and Vinaya and Pratamoksha? Is it all the same thing?
With this view with karma and emptiness, it's just more granular and more sophisticated ways of engaging with your world as it appears. I'm not interested in becoming a theologist. Yeah, you can go and research the essence of the Vinaya vows, of the Vinaya, which are the monks and nuns vows, the Pratimoksha vows for lay persons, you know, the 10 non-virtues. All these things the Buddha said you should try, but they start off as gross things we do, like harming other beings. Stop doing that. And that will clear the way for more things that are projected by your mind, which are more granular, which require a little bit more attention. But you can't pay attention to those if there's a big boulder over here blocking your way, where you're constantly harming life, and then you're trying over here to say, well, let me just fix this part of my mind. So in other words, the higher the vows are, the more intense we get about, the more granular we get about clearing the path to a mind that is clean of all obscurations, of all negativity. Yeah. So, what? You're laughing because I'll be quiet. You're very good today. You're very, very, very nice.
She
Okay.
just looked at my face and it made her laugh.
Okay, good. It's a funny face. So I don't want to get into the granular of it, but what it means is if you make a promise to not harm someone, it's different than choosing not to harm someone when the opportunity comes up. Yeah, the impression on your mind after taking a promise is much stronger. Yeah, and there are, for some people, 340 something vows, right? 340 something ways in which you are watching your mind all the time, which puts a bunch of pressure and attention that actually quickly gives you a result of experiencing the world in a different way. And then the last book we studied is the beginning of the Bodhisattva Charavatara, which is an incredible book collecting the ultimate practice of the 6 perfections, 6 things we can do to be ultra virtuous towards every being, right? So the perfections are perfection of giving first. So generosity, how can we constantly give? Because the implication is the more you give, the more you get. And that's not why you give, right? You're trying to create impressions of generosity, giving, abundance. Yeah. Second, ethics. Yeah. No, that's good. Ethics, right? So the vows, the pratimoksha, that making sure that your mind is focused on these things that can turn otherwise empty objects into blissful, powerful things. Yeah. Then it's a practice, and that's the second. And then you have patience. Are you doing it on purpose? Okay. Concentration is the fifth one. Give me the sixth. Giving, ethics, patience, which means not getting angry when you should. Joyful effort, meaning really understanding why you're doing this and finding joy in doing this good work that you're doing for your world and your mind. And OMG, we have a chef in the room. Hello. Famous chef just entered the room. Then the practice of concentration, getting your mind so sharp that you can choose where it goes and for how long for. Getting to a point of shamatha, which would lead to vipassana, which is wisdom. Yeah? Good. So that's what we covered. Lots of blah, blah words, but I hope you get the essence of why it's not just, oh, I'm a student of Buddhist thought and now I know these things. It's meaningless to you if you're not trying to transform the things that are bothering you in your life. They don't have to be that way if this is true. If things are empty of their nature, and it's our minds that are projecting reality, then every millisecond you've suffered in this world, physically, mentally, or otherwise, is a mistake. It doesn't have to be that way. That's the implication. Now, because I've explained it as simply as I can, doesn't mean it's, oh, okay, I get it now, my life will be fantastic, right? We've got eons of habituation around seeing the world the way we see it, and causing the problems that we are already having as a society, as individuals, and so on, right? Looks like everyone just turned up. So my main interest for this class today is to transform and actually practice these ideas in a real way. So I'm going to give you an ethical dilemma. I'm going to divide the room into two, and this side of the room is going to argue with this side of the room on the correct answer to the ethical dilemma I'm about to give you. You good? So who wants to lead the right side of the room? The right side of the room. The right side of the room.
Your right or our right?
Ah, good. Depends. Stephen just showed the emptiness of the right. The extreme right side of the room. Okay, your right side. So that side is the right? Damn it. You win because there's more of you. Anthony, can you be the boss of that? Yeah? So Anthony's the big boss. And Sarah, you get to, no, I don't want her to be the boss. Sarah gets to be the boss. She's obviously the boss. That's why I didn't do her as a boss. Sarah is the boss from, what's your name?
Nasim.
Nasim.
Yes, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. Hi everyone, that's Nasim. So Nasim is going to go with Sarah, right? So we're here from the camera. Yeah, that's good. They're going to help you. Good. They're going to help you. So you're a group. Just think that you're a group and you're a group, okay? Led by your fearless leader, Anthony and Sarah, unless your right is my right, in which case it would be Sarah and Anthony. Okay, here, pay attention because I'm only going to say it once. Okay, you got to watch the. Can you see, Emily? Because you might be able to contribute. Yeah. If you've seen this before, I worked really hard at this. Okay, this is Buddhist requirement, so you have to enjoy it. Okay. There is this village in the middle of a land that is far, far away, right? And the village has this river, and there's two sides to the village, one on each side of the river. The river has one bridge going over it that connects both sides of the village. And the village has been there for a long, long, long time. We all got that?
Yeah.
Some of the things I said are there to distract you. Some of the things are there to help you. Good. To be politically incorrect, I'm going to use a straight couple. So there's a girl and a guy who absolutely adore each other. They love each other so much that they want to get married. Yeah, and they're like the shining stars of the village. Yeah, everybody loves them. Now, the guy works, I think. Oh no, the river is infested with putrid, horrible things that nobody can touch or they will die. Yeah, I've made charts, but it's not really charts. Yep. The guy works on the other side of the village while the lady stays on this side of the village. Oh, I realized that the video streaming is not the video, but it's this, because that just lagged, right? So the guy works on the other side of the village while the girl stays home and probably doesn't cook. She probably orders in, right? But anyway, she's very excited about her very conventional straight wedding, and he's very excited about his very conventional straight wedding. I feel like I'm totally politically incorrect, even though I'm saying what used to be familiar. Yeah. And so every day for years, he's gone across and come back, and they love each other, and they're so excited, and the village is so excited that they're going to get married. We got that so far? Yeah, good. One bad day, the bridge burns up. Is that what's happening? Yeah. And it happens to be the day that the guy is working across the road. So imagine not being able to reach Anthony. Really, that would be, look, she's happy and smiling. No, that's not what's happening here. So she's totally distraught, and he's like, what about my love, my wedding? There's no way. They have no technology to cross the river. They can't build a bridge. They're like completely distraught. So what happens? Huh? That's very quick of you. So all she wants to do is go back, is try and get over to him to see him. That's all she wants to do. So she goes to her neighbor, who's easily distracted. He's just playing video games all the time, and she asks him, please, can you help me? I'm lost. I don't know what to do. You know, you seem to know about technology. Can you help me get over to him? Because my heart is yearning. I'm dying here. I just need to see him. I can't go another day without him. And the neighbor says, look, I can't help you. I'm busy playing video games. But I know that there's this guy that has a boat. So he lives next door to the river, next to the river. But he's a bit of a suave, so you probably have to sleep with him. You probably have to sleep with him, but he probably would take you across the river, and you'll be able to be with your loved one. Yeah, but that might be the only way ever that you'll get across. Okay, so she's like a little disappointed and says, you're a waste of time. So she goes to see the guy and beg that she doesn't have to sleep with him. Like, hey, dude, he's watching the bird. She's like, would you be so kind to help me out? I don't want to be compromised in any way. And he's like, look, happy to take you, but you're a bit of a sweetheart. How about we make out or something, you know? And she's considering the option. Sure enough, she sort of decides to do it. She's like, okay, I really need you to do it. But unbeknownst, is that right? That one to them, somebody on the other side, on the side of her sweetheart, is watching them with binoculars, right? He's just checking out. He's a bird lover, and he sees the moment where they're making out, right? With his binoculars. I told you I worked really hard to do this. Yeah. So he catches them, and he's like, oh, isn't that the sweetheart of my really good friend who's stuck on this side, and now she's making out with someone? So he's very concerned for his friend, extremely concerned, so concerned that he says, hey, I've got to tell you something. As much as it breaks my heart, I just saw your amazing, lovely girlfriend do something with someone else. Is that up there? So he tells him what he saw, just precisely what he saw, right? And the guy goes, what the hell, you know? So he's extremely upset, very depressed, and no problem. Sure enough, the guy with the boat keeps his promise and takes her across. Yeah, he's like, yeah, happy to take you. Is that there or not yet? Not yet. Happy to take you over, like I promised. She leaves her. He's happy. She's a little distraught, but very excited to see her boyfriend, who then runs away and says, I never want to see you again. This is a sham. I'm leaving. End of sad story. Who's the most moral person and the least moral person in this? Okay, so I need you to tell me, since we're talking about ethics, which create your world, who do you think is the most and least moral person? In order, this group gets to decide, that group gets to decide, and you got to give us arguments why. Nominally, and then ultimately, okay? Enjoy, you got 10 minutes. Go. Is that too much info?
No. Let's make a circle.
Let's make a circle.
All right, gather in everyone.
Here. And introduce yourself, say hi, who you are, who you're not, like we do most classes.
All right, so I'm Anthony. Richard. Robert. I'm Michael.
Matthew.
Nate.
Michelle.
Jeremy.
Steven.
There's an invisible sweet, so.
Hey, Mike.
Should we write on the diagrams now?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Video.
the white.
Yeah.
There's the white, sorry, the wheel.
Well, give your first impression first. Like, who's the worst person in that group? Like, who did it bad? Snooping and telling everyone.
Okay, so,
No, stop it, don't cheat.
And why should it be simple is like conventional one, it's like reasonable and.
Yeah, it's for discussion based on what we know about morality, but you guys like someone in this story already and you hate someone in this story already, that's what I want to know.
And do that, that will be clear the difference between conventional and like what those different are. Okay, so conditional would be like unexamined, it's just like the first thing that like.
Go, Emily.
Yeah, like your impulse is like. But it's like heritage, so like it's that's why I'm proper, like proper cost, like required. For it, and then tangent being the. I would say, I almost think he's the most bland because he gave exactly like functioning about like the image in your mind is like he gave exactly what the thought was and
It's just
either human or human.
Just
kind of number
each
of them based on how
people
they hold this first. So.
Oh, mathematical approach. I've never heard anyone do that.
The surfer. Yeah.
Why? Yeah, the ferryman was the surfer. Yeah. But he was really upfront at the beginning. He was really clear.
Maybe she was waiting for the ends if they had this all together so everyone else saw after that. She didn't want to be
Yeah. Okay.
The entire.
They know they didn't actually like make the vows.
So you're.
I think
Wow.
Far enough that they were gonna get married, because, you know, say, for argument's sake, that as soon as they're both fully committed to the idea of getting married.
Okay, wait, what about that
The
woman?
platform
Is she
is formed. That's not
moral?
the-
I don't think
Right.
that decision.
So,
I don't think
do
she had a normal.
you want to say based on?
She didn't seek out any of that.
So
Her
this is-
only way of getting.
So, I mean, it was just like a
Yeah.
whatever thing to get to the long-term goal, right?
Her intentions weren't like to cheat on.
Right.
Anyway, if anything else, it was whatever I had to do, but didn't like, it wasn't like, you know, she still.
She could have stolen his boat.
Huh?
She could have stolen his boat.
But then she would be so immoral for
We both
stealing.
agree that the ferryman and the wife were
Somebody could say.
one of
We also
the
thought
two,
of
right?
Yeah, but you could also argue that.
Yeah,
Somehow
like,
there's
even
a- I don't know,
if-
argue with the
Help them
exception of
negotiate.
like,
I don't
their
know.
extension is like instant, like, I think that's the learning it back.
Thank you. No, they're against the He was hurt.
I was in what was her financial situation?
The only option she was given was the only option. Yeah. She tried. You can imagine all the persuasion, and it worked out. Did nothing work. Everyone's solution is so bad. It's like, steal, kill. Okay. Did you get the
You want to go through
Just
He didn't help anybody, he's so self-reliant,
So you might have said, well, it's kind of like a story.
One, two,
He didn't help anybody.
Right. The other thing was, you assumed that maybe it's not too much, but maybe on the report is exactly, literally, what is he protecting truth or was he?
So then our next task is to figure out like who was the least sharp.
Yeah.
Right?
So like always gonna get the worst.
I mean, I guess.
Wait, why?
Because I asked relatively and ultimately. Yeah. So you get 4 answers.
Who did the worst?
I mean, you didn't make any effort either. You didn't make any effort to
Like
understand
who,
their
from what they did,
He was hurt.
are they gonna experience?
We never even talked with her, never even asked her.
Yeah, so, yeah. Like, there's a final. Who do you feel like?
Oh, maybe, so maybe if we do the 10 first, she was like.
If
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
graduating from that into the version, we'll have like,
Whose actions will cause the worst outcome?
Oh, I think that's her.
Oh,
Sorry, no,
so-
yeah, husband.
Oh, the husband.
I think it's the husband.
I was assuming the not yet.
No, what?
Yeah.
Fiance
Yeah, the
wants-
husband. I think so. Like, even little, and then ran away. Yes.
I did not
So the player, he just ran away. He was like, how the hell did you get over
The
here?
gate.
So he didn't even come on.
It's like it's nice to feel proud.
No, they had a meeting, they met, and then he's like, I can't do this. You hurt me. And run away.
Yeah, before she
Yeah, she came over.
When he saw her.
Once she said, oh, I love you. And he's like, no, I don't love you.
Well,
He failed. His
so it's all about how you do
She
it.
had like
Right.
cheated on him and he didn't.
Didn't say, go do this.
You
He didn't
Yeah.
incite
Well, I mean, I think
say
it's like,
or do anything.
what was the result?
He actually gave all of the information.
Yeah. And we're assuming that
It's just an option, she didn't have to pick it.
but if we're thinking like, for the first guy, this, video game player, what
Look at the others, they all did something
perceived
active.
intention to
Speech.
receive? Of
Action.
kind of being like, yo, I can't help you, let me recommend someone.
Everybody did.
Well, that's what I was gonna say too, is that like, they all are, and they all aren't.
And you're the only one who can help.
Perception.
That's what I think.
Things like
The video game.
Yeah, nature and this.
Yeah.
What you just see, if you use it, where it's a matter of our perspective versus.
I mean, ultimately, there's always, you have to know like what.
Which reality?
What?
But like,
That's my point,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
their reality or
If
there's
you
no,
had
like,
to figure out
you can't say that one
what
is
you
more or
think
less
their karmic
important
result
per
would
se,
be,
it's all
I just think that's they're saying that
They said it's a story. It's
Mhm.
a story like empty as a caretaker from its own. Yeah, no, I mean, things are really more from who's perspective.
I know, that's where we're getting.
Like if-
Yeah, good, good.
They're gonna get results.
I think for me,
It's not like Hector didn't tell us.
my initial reaction before I thought about it,
He did.
I go to least moral
Right,
incident
but I
to
guess
the
that's
surfer
what I'm
dude,
saying.
because if he was moral, he just would never cross. But initially, like who's most moral, nobody jumps out. Like the surfer dude jumps out instantly as least moral without much thought.
I think if the fiance.
We don't even really know the
like,
answer to the fiance.
anything to reunite.
You know, it's-
They probably don't wanna just have a romantic sister. No, I agree.
When someone's got going on, really, all you've got is like what I'm in front of you, right? Like,
Maybe go with it. Maybe you know, like, hitting on her.
Are you guys ready to present your findings? Are you guys ready to present your findings?
I would say we were for you. We know the circle
Yes, you do. He's like, I'm happy to do it, but I want this, this payment. What's wrong with that? She can search yours.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like I learned more when I teach civil, but that's the same thing having anyone being like, yeah, I know. You would. Again, like, oh, okay, yeah.
It's just
But
given what
either way, that
information
Hector
we
told
have,
the story,
you know.
we could see the facial expression on the bride when she presented
Yeah,
that.
that's
to the
just
surfer,
like
she
it's-
asked him to
I
do
have
it.
to look at more.
And Hector actually said,
I
well,
think
they're not
that's
doing
what
anything.
you
I
guys
forget
is
what
what
it
it's
is.
for, because he's just doing it.
Yeah, so I sort of lean towards
And he's
the
just doing it for,
story
whatever,
tells
to take
us
advantage.
that her intention was
I
not to
mean,
get paid.
is it totally immoral
Just to offer that
to
as a group.
ask for, payment of one person after doing that? You could have some like a fee. You know, money or.
But you know, Michael said that she tried money and we didn't like it.
Yeah, like, I think it's really like,
I don't
keep
think
it
like that's
kind of like.
Someone else's suffering, like we're in a position where she's like, I mean, I pretty much.
What do you mean by she might be
the one
cheating?
I didn't like for grad, but
She might be cheating, yeah, intention.
That level of like opportunism over like in the face of someone.
That's a good ethical dilemma right there. If cheating wasn't her intention, but she saw herself cheating, what result will she get?
Definitely, like, the result of someone cheating on her. saying-
Without intention, yeah, unintentionally,
Why would she see that?
because she's witnessing herself.
Like with desire, desire.
No, but she's recording herself doing something, yeah, being with someone that's not her partner.
But I think it would be different.
Your mind is recording that action. So should we unite, ladies and gentlemen, and see what you all say with each other? So who's the boss of this side? Anthony, you're gonna represent? Yeah.
We have no consensus.
Yeah, yeah.
And also,
It's all empty.
That's not a good answer. That's a lazy Buddhist answer. Guys, are you ready? Too bad.
It's actually worse than being taken advantage of for being
Could be both.
Ah, good. Okay, Sarah, you're up against Anthony in a public representation of each other's groups. So you can sit here, and then you can sit here, and then and you can talk to them. Yeah. And you're not really debating, you're just going to share the. So who came to a very clear consensus? Like, did your group, were they definite?
We had a consensus for a conventional, least moral person, and we had a dilemma with the ultimate.
Okay, and your side?
No consensus whatsoever.
I think it's because they have a bigger group.
They have a bigger group, and Mike Wick kept throwing a spanner in the works. Yeah. So come. Yeah. You're gonna sit here facing that way. Come on, don't be shy.
I prefer to stay on.
Oh, really? Okay, good. So he's gonna stay there. You stay there. Tell us some of the problems in your team, and who was the least moral person? That's probably the fastest answer people have when I've done this before.
We really didn't. Everybody argued.
Well, I think
Who
you said this.
I said the surfer, but
Yeah.
Surfer, least moral person. You?
The consensus was the surfer.
The surfer, right? Okay.
We took a majority vote.
Right. What was your method, which was bizarre? Yeah. You said, but what was it? You suggested.
To tally up like the number of people each of them helped versus harmed, and then just do it.
She was going to do a matrix.
That's pretty good.
Because that's a really easy way to go around life, right? And figure out whether my actions are going to help or not. These thousands of people in New York City. Because the point of this is to apply our knowledge, right, to a real life problem. And in America at the moment, we have this problem with children in cages, right? I mean, it's not exactly this problem, but it's that kind of complexity, yeah? And who's right?
With as
And
many
who's wrong?
opinions.
Huh?
With more opinions.
With way more opinions, yeah, than this group. And you couldn't come to a consensus with a very simple or simplified story, right? So consensus on probably the least moral person was the surfer and the sani, right? Give me some arguments why that's not true that you heard in your group.
Why it's not.
Why it's not true that he is the
because he
least
was
moral person.
honest of what he wanted.
Right, so his actions were pretty clear, right? It was like, I'm happy to use my boat to take you over, but I require payment, and this is the payment. Like, I'm pretty upfront. You have a choice to do it or not, right? That was pretty clear. What's immoral about that?
Because he knew she didn't have a choice.
Don't we live in a beautiful capitalist society where you are requiring payment for certain things, and that's just his payment?
It's single will. It's his own will without any regard or respect of other will.
Okay. What about her? Didn't she want something single-willed? She just wanted to get across no matter what?
That's a good point.
Yeah, okay.
Did the surfer guy know that she was gay?
Did what?
Did the surfer guy know that she was gay?
Yeah, because he lived in the village, yeah. So even knowingly, he still required payment. That is a compromise, yeah, in his mind. That's a good point. What else for the surfer guy that made him reasonable?
He did what he promised.
He totally did what he's the only one that helped her get across. No one else did.
And she did go there knowing that that was the deal.
Oh,
She
good.
knew that before she went, and she was like, let me just
See if it works. I'm willing to do anything. Right? Yeah. What was yours?
Well, I was gonna say the beforehand why it wasn't okay in terms of the one will is that he had the monopoly on the
Isn't that what we said?
But she didn't seek out any other options.
She seeked out another option. She asked the next door neighbor, but he was too lazy to help her. He's like, I don't know, I'm busy playing
So
this.
she would have asked him.
Then the whole PowerPoint would have taken forever because I'd be paging of it. Then she asked the next door neighbor, and then she asked the next door neighbor.
It's her ethics.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So to whose ethics?
That she, if you're gonna compromise, well, I guess we don't know what her ethics are, but she did put effort into finding another solution.
Anyone have a different opinion? It's so weird because when I do this, it's either I've done this before, the surfer guy or the bride to be are called upon as the worst people in the story because everyone else was either neutral or very clear or actually did something. Yeah, it's usually a divide between those two. So you guys
For me, it was the bride,
For you, it was the bride.
but we did a ritual.
So yours doesn't count, but you thought you'd put it in there. Yeah. Okay. What about most moral? The person that stayed most moral. You guys-
We didn't get to that.
Video game guy?
Yeah, I did not know.
Why?
Yeah, I was saying because he was just like, look, I don't know, but let me tell you someone who can help you. Because he just like, he was like relatively indifferent. Offered
Okay.
an option.
So no
but
action.
Just was like.
No action, but a little bit of help. Okay, so he did something.
I think it's the binocular, the sailor guy.
He's the most moral?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he saw his friend being cheated on, and he went and killed him.
But he wasn't cheating.
But he doesn't know that. All he saw was.
So he just stirred up the pot.
Jump to conclusion.
He jumped to conclusion.
But he didn't. You said he just reported what.
No, I know, that's what I said. I said it on purpose to get
That's
you.
cheating, because he saw her having, I don't know what you're describing.
They made out in my very powerful
Yeah.
keynote.
He
Yeah.
just reported what he saw.
Mhm.
And what, did he see her, or did he not see her committing adultery? Well, it's not adultery, it's fornication.
I liked Lisa, right? Nassim. She said that the most moral was the wife to be because she made a sacrifice.
Was
And
moral.
Moral, because she
Yeah.
made a sacrifice.
And the least moral was the husband to be because he could not forgive.
Wow, that's
Or-
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Who likes that answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I agree.
I agree. I know you were there like going, no, but what about? Yeah.
She was willing to give up her own, morality maybe to be with. He said, I also like what Richard Persona said, like the whole town wanted them to be together, so is that the most important thing in this story for them to be together? That's going to make the most people joyful.
But you raised the question of motive. Was her motive to make the town happy,
What?
or was her motive to make herself happy? That's
If-
another-
Nice,
that's
nice.
another point, right?
If the whole town wanted them to be together, then wouldn't that include the guy who had
The surfer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really wanted them to be together. He just requires payment every time he uses the word.
And what about the telescope?
It literally won't run unless I have sex with it.
It's a special kind of boat. And it's also a small boat. They have to be so close to each other. Yeah.
What about the telescope then?
Just getting payment is more than just getting payment. He knew that he was creating a harm for her.
Yeah.
That's a good point, and that's completely correct. If he knew that he was compromising someone else's thing, it's probably it's probably creating in him, or ultimately we can say, right, the imprint that he's compromised someone, right? But did he also not actually take her and keep his promise? And without him, she would never have gotten across.
Then the same can be said about the video game player who knew that he was going to be compromising her relationship by telling her about the option. when
So he
was
should have
young.
not said anything, and then she would have been stuck.
I don't necessarily agree with him.
So
Just that by
is there an answer here?
No.
No, okay. No, there isn't, but you made an awesome point. Can you share that?
I'll try. The whole point was like, exactly what you said, there's no answer. It's all relative, it's all a matter of perspective. So we're all debating about intentions, like we don't know intentions, and they're all moral and immoral at the same time, more or less.
Depending.
I was wondering if it matters if like one karmic result weighs more than another karmic result.
That's a pretty cool question, right? And that's a really good, cool question. Is there a karmic result, and how can you tie it to his answer, that is more powerful than another karmic result, right? So you have the 10 non-virtues, right? That the Buddha listed the 10 things that will probably harm you the most if you do them. And he listed these top 10 above the other 84,000 or 83,990 mental afflictions. Out of the 84,000 things you could do wrong that would harm you, not wrong because someone said so, but wrong because the result would hurt you, here are the top 10 that would harm you if you did them: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, etc. Right? So there must be a hierarchy of things that would harm you more than others. So can you do that to this story? What would be the worst thing?
Like the root downfalls. Are you talking about that?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Well, sexual misconduct, right?
Is in the top 10. Yeah.
If it's the top 10, then whoever caused that probably.
Right, but who caused it?
The surfer dude.
No, the wife.
Video game.
The video gamer, the wife, the servant.
In a way.
Karmically.
Who did it the most?
But doesn't it,
It's just a matter of
it changes depending on who's viewing the story and depending on like
Yeah.
who
Amazing.
is experiencing that thing. And also like what their internal calibration is about those 10 things. Like the thing that hits you more, like for some people sexual misconduct is not an issue, but killing your family member is. That it's like, that's top rung.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's every situation, it's every perception, then it's gonna be different.
Yeah. Interesting. And someone said over here, what if her motivation was to keep the entire village happy by meeting with him, since everybody depended on them, and then she was willing to sacrifice anything to keep everybody happy? Isn't that an awesomely high motivation? So I think the bottom line here is that doesn't matter how horrible the situation looks outside, the individual participants in there each have their own experience and their own motivation. Yeah. So the way things appear, so for example, for the husband to be, he heard this disturbed him a lot. He's like, I can't be with you after you did that. And he goes away, right? So was that a direct result of what happened? Looking at it from what you've studied already in Buddhist thought, if this is true, that there is no rose here, that there is no nice feeling or nice smell in here, that the nice smell or good image is forced upon me by something I've done in the past, right? Because that's the theory. If this is how my world exists, I am experiencing a rose, and it does smell fantastic. That's a true thing, but it's not that way from its own side. It's something in me, my actions in the past, that is producing the sweetness, the pleasurable sensation, both visually and olfactory. Is that olfactory? Yeah. So if that's true, did the husband-to-be who got very upset and ran away, where did that come from? Did that come from him seeing the picture of them kissing?
No, it came from him cheating on someone in the past.
Huh?
It came from him being unfaithful in the past.
Yeah, in this theory, yeah, that perception in his mind upon seeing that image of she's cheated on me, I can't be with her, this is terrible, I'm running away, is forced upon him by his actions in the past, which must have been compromising a relationship to some degree, because the cause is always smaller than the result. Yeah?
Where's the point of personal choices? There's always that gap of
Yeah,
the thing
it-
that's forced upon you, but then you have a moment
You have a moment to choose.
of choice.
Yeah.
Well, there's more. The karma of the previous action is one thing, but the causes and conditions, his lack of patience, his lack of concentration, being able to not be upset and immediately burst into an anger or whatever his reaction was, has to do with his training, his mind training.
No, we're all in his boat, not the surfer boat. We're all in the same boat. Your question and his comment are tied together, right? Insofar as Richard's saying, if the guy was a better meditator, if he was a nicer, if he was a more moral person, if he studied Buddhism, he'd have a better choice in the moment, right? Because where does choice come from? The moment, the gap that you have in your mind, or is something forcing choice?
Yes.
You see, yes. Choice is also empty of a nature. And being able to, I know it hurts to think about, but if you investigate, and this is where you get really heady in Buddhist thought, right? Some people are quick to react, some people have a gap, Some people, we got to teach this at real estate the other day. We're teaching a group of real estate agents to meditate, and we're saying that one of the things you can do with meditation, with the habit building of meditation, is slow down the reaction process between I just saw this and now I'm going to act. Yeah, that might be really good, but you might want to analyze the situation if you've meditated enough or the rest to be able to make a correct action based on what you witness. Because what you witness is relatively a certain way, but understood with wisdom, it's another way. In other words, if he was a good meditator, if he did have training, which you can't say that about the people that have the kids in cages, right? You can't say, oh, if they've been meditating more, then we don't have to deal with the kids in cages issue. That's not something we do. You know, we can't just go to everybody, please meditate some more, so then the current problem will go away. That's not a thing.
So if he had forgiven her once the news was delivered, would that dissipate that karma, like of him having cheated, like being unfaithful in the past? Is that?
That's a great question. This is awesome. So did you get your answer about the gap? Some people have a small gap, some people have no gap. Yeah? I don't know if you remember Jamie Zimmerman. Who remembers her? Mm-hmm. She passed away in Hawaii a couple of years ago, but she used to be all about the gap that's created in your meditation habit. And she used to tell the story about her father who was incarcerated, who died in prison because he didn't have enough of a gap between stimuli and response. And that got him in trouble all the time. And some people have the perception of choice, which actually is choice, that we have the perception of a flower, which actually is a flower for us. Yeah, he didn't have that gap, but she's like all about you can create that gap with meditation. Yeah, so that's true for the surfer, that's true for the girl, that's true for the husband to be, and so on. Your question was,
is the karmic cycle, that micro karmic cycle, complete as a result of forgiveness? And then the other question I had earlier relating to the whole debate is there, did Buddha ever say anything about cost of action versus cost of inaction in the way?
Cool. Now, inaction is also an action. It's an action not to do something. Right. Yeah? So the game player, right, was also aware that he might have been able to walk with her and convince the neighbor or try and troubleshoot or something. He chose not to do it. So his inaction still has implications in his world, which his mind records and creates an imprint, which must cause him a result later of inaction. Yeah.
But is the weight of the imprint a function of how evolved the practitioner is? Like if their stage of understanding is here, is it kind of known that they experience a lesser than someone who's extremely conscious, highly evolved?
The degree of the result is saying
yeah.
Depends on a bunch of things, and this is the course on karma, course 5, which talks about the intensity with which you're feeling and perceiving. So if you're in a heightened emotional state, the imprint is much stronger, which will deliver a bigger or quicker result. If the object towards which you're acting, so and I say this in the classes, if you're going to squish a bug or kill your mother, you're just removing 2 sentient beings from the planet. Which one has the bigger imprint in your mind? Yeah, it's probably your mother, right? So that will have a much stronger and more powerful result and quicker result than just squishing a bug. But both will have a result. Yeah, that's the second half of your question. Your first, I didn't like your first question because it implied that because he was a good boy later and he listened to her, his shitty behavior might disappear. His bad karma might disappear.
Well, yeah. The cycle itself. So like if you perform enough good, it's not that it would outweigh the bad on an absolute level, but from the same sort of thing happening in repeat cycles in the history of that person's
continuing.
Yeah, continuing. Does it complete?
I don't know why you mean complete.
It's like if getting cheated on, it exterminates you getting cheated on forever. And the answer is no.
No, he's saying,
Was that what your question was?
That's basically what, yeah.
Say it again.
It seems like an obvious answer. that it
If the
would be
karma
no.
ripens once, does the entire cycle?
Yeah,
then-
no, because in fact, it probably tells you that there's more of that where it came from. Yeah, the fact that you've had it come up.
Thank you.
oh, I thought what he was asking was if, instead of having the reaction he had, which will most likely continue the cycle, if in that moment he kind of was maybe a little wiser and forgave her, would that break that cycle?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Huh.
I had the exact same question. It's like, I mean, if karma is the cycle, then, and we're analyzing like causality and reaction and all these things,
Yeah.
then what's the point of that if there's not something that necessarily resolves it? Like,
I love that you think this way. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's really what he meant, even though that's what he had meant before.
Thinking things down and talking at the same time.
Awesome. Great question. Okay, and if you get this, and then understand that you can apply this to absolutely anything that you experience, think, see, anything at all in your field of awareness, this answer can apply to. Okay, so if he experienced the story, which are words from his binocular friend, yeah, he said, hey, I saw your girl kissing some other guy, or whatever he said, right? Which formed a picture in the groom-to-be's mind. And that picture was probably a literal, she was kissing him, yeah, trying to, whatever he got as a description. But quickly added to that was a whole bunch of other subtext, which was cheating, the bitch, why, you know, whatever we do when we feel cheated on. Yeah, that came from the words of his friend telling him. Is that the nature of the friend's words? Did from the collection of those sounds, is that necessarily the only solution, the only result of those words? No, right? So where did that come from for the groom to be? Where did the whole picture and story come from? It's something in his mind. He can't help but see Rose. He can't help but experience those words as total cheating. That made me so upset. Do you see it? Yeah? So it must have been in him, but the conditions arose where someone said some words, there was something seen, and upon those conditions, upon that basis, boom, that past cycle of karma, the results of all that karma in his mind, all his imprints in the past, just burst out into a complete experience that for him was so palpable and real that it made him say, I'm leaving. Yeah? If he leaves and says, screw you, you're just a terrible person, I'm leaving, what imprint is left in his mind based upon his action? What did he see himself do? Abandon a relationship, right? He sees himself abandoning a relationship. With what flavor, good or bad? Bad. So he just imprinted his mind. If the situation is empty of having a nature, he just imprinted in his mind, I'm leaving this relationship and she wants to be with me, but I'm hurting her now because she hurt me. Bye. He recorded that even if it was justified for him. Yeah? Because it was justified for him because that's how he experienced it. But if he had the gap, if he had the awareness, the knowledge, if he could have reacted differently, he might have gone, if he understood this, right, he would have said, what about that situation? The friend is going, did you know I just saw her kissing someone? If he had wisdom and understood causality, the way we're explaining it here, he would have said, what about that appearance in his mind when the friend told him the words? What is the explanation of where that whole reality came from for him, ultimately? There's something in me where I compromised the relationship. I don't know if it was cheated, right? Because karma grows over time. The tree didn't start off that size. It started off as a tiny seed. And time causes things to grow. a small course produces a big result. And if he had a big result of she cheated on me and this is his whole story, it's probable that his cause for that was just a small disregard for a relationship that over time grew into a big result. I know it's simplified, but if you can think of it that way, and if he had the wisdom that we're discussing here, he would have had a gap between the appearance, based on words, based on conditions. Your girlfriend was kissing someone, then the whole story emerged based on those words, and he would have seen that the story isn't in the words or in the picture from the binoculars, but in fact, it is his mind projecting that reality onto what actually happened. And if he wanted to stop it, if he didn't want that to be the case anymore, to have a breakup in a relationship, what should he do at that moment? What seed should he plant in his mind? What imprint should he put in his mind if he no longer wants relationships to break up? In that moment.
Forgiveness.
Huh?
Forgiveness.
Some kind of forgiveness.
Selfless, unconditional love, and no self-judgment.
Yes. Unconditional love for this being who's sitting there going, hey, I love you, I want to be with you, I'll do anything. What if she actually did something wrong to be with him? Should he give her unconditional love? Let's go theoretically speaking. Let's go theoretically speaking, understanding that your reality is not coming this way, but your reality is forced upon you based on the stuff you fill your mind with through your actions.
Of course, that's the only way he'll get her to
The only way he's going to break the cycle of broken relationships is to keep this relationship together.
What if she consciously?
I know.
What if she consciously cheated on him without sacrificing both? If she said, "Oh, you know,
different story."
Say that
Does
again.
that change anything here? Would that still?
Tell me the scenario again.
So she cheated with the surfer guy out of just, you know,
Yeah.
and then like fast forward.
She keeps doing it after they get together. She's like, this was awesome. I'm going to keep doing that. Yeah. Good question.
You always keep the relationship intact regardless of.
Good question.
A relationship.
Well, maybe it's not about the relationship. If he really unconditionally loved her, meaning he didn't want her to hurt anyone else or herself, real compassion there would be not having her see herself hurt someone.
Nice. Okay.
So then you should kill her.
No.
But he also has to take care of himself and not harm himself.
Nice, because he's also a being, right? Did you get that answer?
You don't see yourself doing anything bad anymore.
But then she wouldn't see herself at all. She still needs to see herself.
Isn't that better than seeing yourself doing something bad?
I'll get to you and you after they finish arguing.
Because what? So then when you're dead, you don't have any more perceptions.
So your last perception of you cheating on someone.
Say that again. Who said that? Is that what you said? She's wrong. When you're dead, you don't have any more perception?
I said wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong. Right? It's wrong. That's not how it is. Of course,
Yeah,
yes.
so the point is always to keep the relationship intact, or is that not the highest?
What does it mean to keep the relationship intact?
It means, you know, that unconditional love is always in process. It's always happening. Regardless of whatever the circumstances are that are unfolding.
Now I'll get Alison to tell you her answer.
No, you have to have love for all beings, including yourself, and actually have to start with yourself, I think. So if you're choosing to stay in a relationship where you're being abused or mistreated, then you're not following the very first part of being not harming.
So at what point do you ride that edge, right? So what if that moment of choice is like, I think I understand you, we can work this out, let me figure it out, I'll try and keep it together, right? But then she develops a habit of, let's keep doing this. What should he do? And I think that's correct, right? So it's not like, I will follow the Buddha's rule and I will do this, right? But ultimately, if what we say is true, which I can't think of the world in any other way anymore, that things do not come this way, that every experience my mind has, including my thoughts, including what I see, smell, taste, touch, hear, is a projection forced upon me by my past actions. If that's true, then being with her or not being with her has nothing to do with me experiencing relationships cheating on me. It all has to do with me. So I want to clean up my karma of cheating, which makes me moral enough. Yeah, I have to respect not just my relationship, but I would want to plant seeds to take care of everybody's relationship and bring people together. Plant seeds and bring people together, bring people together. Wow. Right? So you see the link now? Like if it's all your responsibility, even the stuff you don't want it to be, yeah? If it is your responsibility, you can change the world. If it's not your responsibility, if there is even a molecule of self-existence out there where things are the way you think they are, then you're screwed. The world is sucky and you're stuck here until you're dead and you can't change it. No one can change it. Everyone has to live out the horrible yuckiness that is into the earth, and it's in her behavior, and it's, you know, it's unchangeable. No, the fact that it's in us, projected onto otherwise empty things that could be either this way or that way, depending on who is perceiving it, means you have incredible opportunity to transform this world, this Manhattan, this New York City, with its smells, its yelling, its construction, into the most majestic place you've ever walked into, and that jackhammering is nothing but bliss for you, right? And it's terrible for someone else. And therein lies the power of what Buddha saw, and he said, if you guys want to have the same experience, there is another code behind the appearance, the illusion that you're seeing. There's another code, and if you get to that code, you can undo all the harm, and you can reach a state of enlightenment. Yeah? Enlightenment meaning your mind is free from being afflicted by all this crap that you think is coming at you. In fact, you're the projector of all of it. You know, you're not choosing to, right? Make this into a golden rod. You know, you're not choosing to, you can't. It's forced upon you by cause and effect, like everything else in the universe. And that, my friends, lets you create a perfect world. And that's the story. Did you hate the ethical dilemma? No, it was good, right? Because it is exactly the same in our everyday. So the importance of what we've learned here is, sure, you've got to learn what are all the components that make up the blueprint to reaching a state of enlightenment, awakening, nirvana, etc. All those words just mean that you, instead of being forced to perceive a broken realm, can perceive a realm that is just divine and sublime, which makes it divine and sublime. Is this a rose? Yeah, it's a rose, right? Is it existing out there as rose by itself? No, but isn't it a rose? Yeah, it's solid and real, and that's the only real it is. A rose that existed out there, separate from my perception, does not exist, could never exist, has never existed. Otherwise, dogs must go, rose. Fleas must go, rose. And they don't. So there's nothing in that. That is complete potential, but you can't choose it in the moment. It's forced upon you by the way you are. And if you get access to that, then you're no longer normal humans. You're extraordinary beings with full potential to be beyond human. And see yourself and each other as such, for real as a rose is a rose is a rose. For real. And it doesn't come easy. Just understanding it tonight isn't enough. It needs practice. It needs constant practice. And the practice is failing over and over at relationships that break your heart. And then you're like, but I didn't do anything to deserve that broken heart. And that's true for that relationship. But the fact that you're having it and not the neighbor means it's in you. If you want to stop it, don't punch out the person in your relationship. Do whatever it can to make peace. And that's true for children in cages, and that's true for a shitty government, and that's true for a good government, and that's good for an awesome country, and that's true for a not so awesome country. It's true for all of the experiences we have. We've been having these experiences for millennia as creatures that think we are certain about the way the world works. And it doesn't mean throw out the way you experience the world. It means grab that and now add a layer of wisdom. And with that wisdom, you then have the power to transform, because you're filling your mind with the very essence that doesn't see things in a certain way only, but sees the infinite possibility in them, which means you must experience that infinite possibility. It's incredible when you get the technology here. So I hope you find it, and I hope you share it. And we'll offer all this to every being that wants a little bit of wisdom.
사실
불길 주신 메토트람 위라딩시은 윤대윤바비 상계 심두미 태두와르기 드로큰 남다 신라주하쇼 이런 그릇 나만다가 탐리야타야미 대와디도금 스남 예셰석성신 스남 예셰매준웨 담파크니 조파쇼. Thank you for letting me ramble on with things that I think are extraordinary but hard to keep. A couple of announcements.